Okay, now our form has set up and it is time for us to cut our lid. When we go to cut our lid, we want to make sure that we're cutting at an angle, a beveled edge. So when these come together, they're going to want to lock together securely. If you did just a straight cut, your lid will be more inclined to want to slide right off. There's nothing to grip it into place. Also, you want to create a notch. You could just do one notch right in the middle or to one side. You can see on this form, I have 1, 2, 3 notches. Before you add any decorative elements or any surface treatment, each side is going to look very similar. So that notch also is going to help you figure out every time which way this lid goes on, or else you might be like, oh, and you got to wait and just, it's like playing a game to figure it out. So that notch helps you figure out where the lid goes back on, but it also serves security to lock that lid on. So let's get started cutting your lid with notches, or one singular notch. Okay. So you can decide if you have one area, like one side that you don't think looks as great, you could choose that to be your bottom. You have to decide how large you want your lid to be. The farther you measure down to cut your lid, the less internal space you have to keep your treasures in. So you need to decide how big you would like your lid. You do have to make sure that your lid is long enough that you're getting past your slab. Your slab thickness is about 1/4 inch, so you can't measure down 1/4 inch and cut, or you're just going to be cutting into your slab and not actually cutting a lid. So minimum, you'd want to do 1/2 inch. Usually for a form like this, I wouldn't go over 1 inch for the size of my lid, but that's totally up to you. Maybe you're going to make this into an incense holder, so you want a shallow area, and then you're going to pierce this, so you want a larger area on the top. So for me, I'm going to use this as a lidded jar to store some stuff, so I want more storage space. So I'm going to take my ruler and I'm going to measure 1 inch and make a mark on my 2 outer edges and then in the middle. And then I can take my ruler and line those up and make a track line. Do the same thing all the way around your form. All the way around, we made lines to indicate where our lid is going to be. Now we have to decide our notch. Are we going to do more than one notch? Is it going to be a triangle? Is it going to be a circle? Triangles and circles are kind of the best shapes to do because you want to make sure that whatever you choose for your notch, that it's wider on the top and gets narrower. If you did a triangle like this, that's not gonna work because when you go to try to lift this up, it's gonna get stuck. It's not gonna pull off. And some people think, oh, I could lift it and shift it out. Sure, but a lot of the time it will get stuck in the firing. It just doesn't work the best. So I would use a half circle or a triangle. So you can do a square as well, but you have to be very mindful when you're cutting it that it is straight up and down, because if you even accidentally cut out just a little bit where it makes it wider on the bottom and narrower on the top, you're gonna have the same issue of when you go to lift it off, it gets stuck. If you want it to be exactly in the middle, you're gonna wanna measure your side. So if you're doing 4 inches, make a mark at 2 inches. So I made my mark exactly in the middle. And then from that mark, I'm gonna measure about a ½ inch out on both sides. So it's gonna help me place my cap that I'll be tracing for my circular notch. Now you can see I have my halfway point and a 1/2 inch from both of those. Place the cap so half of it is above and below the line that I created. And I'm just tracing it with my needle tool. Now I'm gonna go ahead and take my rib and I'm gonna get rid of this line. I find that if you don't, when you go to cut your lid, sometimes you just keep cutting straight across and you forget you need to follow the line for your notch. Okay, so now it is time to cut our lid. I find it is very hard to cut that angle if you have the form resting on its side. It's easier to keep that angle if you're pulling the blade towards you, and that works if you have your lid portion to the top. So when I go to cut this, I don't want to keep this blade straight. I want to put it at about a 45-degree angle. So I'm going to place the blade in just right at the side, not past it, right at the side, the far end, and I'm pushing it in at the angle, and now I'm going to cut it at that angle, following the line. I'm going to stop just shy of the end, because if I keep pulling this through at that angle, I'm going to cut through this side of my lidded box. So you got to stop right, you want to get right to that edge as close as you can without pulling through. I'm just going to get in there as close as I can, then remove the blade. Now I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to not go in straight. I'm going to angle my blade. I'm going to come right up to the edge, put that blade in at the angle. Now we have my notch here. So I'll show you what we do when we get to the notch. I'm pulling the tool with the angle. Now I'm going to stop and remove it. Now I'm going to set this so I'm looking down on the notch. The notch does not have to be beveled. It can just be a straight cut. So I'm pulling the blade with my right hand while I'm rotating the form on the newspaper with my left hand. And now that I have made it around the notch, I have to go back to my angle for the opposite side of the notch. So I'm going to go back, place my blade in at the angle cut, and pull the rest of the way, going all the way to the edge, but without pulling through. Okay, same thing at my edge, not straight, angled. And do the same thing on your last side. All right, so you'll see if you can shift your lid off. Sometimes it'll be stuck in these corners if you didn't go all the way up to the end of them, or sometimes it'll be stuck around your notch. So you may have to go back in with your blade and release it, but usually if you just shift the lid back and forth, it'll pop off. Now you'll see that we have this angle all the way around our lid and all the way around our body of our form. Now you'll see some spots where I got a little bit stuck or didn't cut all the way through, so I have this little extra notch of clay here on the base portion. And then I have the indentation of where that fits in there. Don't clean that off. A lot of the time you just want to start cleaning this up, but you don't want to change the shape of this because this fits together perfectly. So if you start cleaning this up and removing clay from here or here, this is no longer gonna wanna fit on here. You wanna knock down these sharp edges because through use, a lid that's being taken on and off frequently, if there's thinner, sharp edges around here or in here, they're more likely to chip over time. So you do wanna knock down these sharp edges on the outside, on the inside here, same with right here in here, but you do not wanna alter this track That's allowing these to set together nicely. Okay, so we have that cut now. Now you'll notice that we have our side here. That doesn't look as refined on the inside because remember when we capped this, that would have been the area that we have not scored and laid a coil yet. All the other sides have already been treated with the coil, but not where we capped it. So I'm just texturing up the inside of this one side that we didn't lay the coil down yet. And I'll do that on the lid as well. So just roll out a small coil. The coil really only needs to be 1/4 inch or even slightly thinner than that. So I already scored this. I'm gonna add a little slip. I like to get my coil wet, then I can lay it on the inside and then just start to compress it where I need it, being mindful that I'm not gonna have it go up onto my top here because I don't wanna change this shape. And then I'm just gonna run my finger, my index finger back and forth, really compressing that coil into that space. You don't wanna just lay the coil there. It's not gonna do anything. It'll be more inclined to wanna crack out if you don't go in and actually compress it and make it part of this form. And I'm gonna take my fingernails and compress further. So right now I'm taking my thumbnail, I'm getting rid of some of that extra coil I don't need and further compressing that coil. Okay, so you can see it's nice and smooth and fully compressed. Now I want to do the same thing on the lid. If you have a bamboo tool with a rounded corner, you could use that to blend the coil in further, or you could just use your fingers and your fingernails. If you have a wooden tool that has rounded edges, you could use those as well. Now you can see our inside corners are nice and filled in. There's no gaps or crevices. And so all those corners are nice and secure. So now we're gonna be less likely to get any cracks that form on our edges or on our seams where these walls came together. Now we have our box. So we are going to decorate this surface using the applique technique. So you can turn this into an original piece of artwork. Okay.